The night was cold and quiet, the kind of night when even the wind seemed afraid to make a sound. Maria sat on her old wooden chair beside the window, watching the faint glow of the streetlight outside. Her small house, though old and creaky, had always felt warm and safe to her. The ticking of the wall clock mixed with the soft crackle of the fireplace made everything seem peaceful. But deep inside, Maria felt something strange that night. Something heavy, like a warning whisper she couldn't understand. She had just finished cleaning the kitchen. The smell of soap still floated in the air. Her favorite blue cup sat beside the sink, and she smiled faintly, remembering how her late husband used to drink tea from that same cup every morning. Life had been simple since he passed away, lonely, but peaceful. Her son Daniel lived in another city now, busy with his own family. They didn't talk much these days, but she always told herself he must be busy with work. Outside, the night grew darker. The clock struck 10:30. Maria walked to her small bedroom, pulled the blanket over her legs, and closed her eyes. But she couldn't sleep. Her mind kept returning to her son. I wonder if he even thinks about me anymore, she thought. The silence in the room felt too deep, too still. And then, suddenly, a faint smell reached her nose, something sharp, bitter, and strange. At first she thought it was her imagination. But the smell grew stronger, thicker, and it began to sting her throat. Maria sat up, confused. Her heart started to beat faster. She turned her head toward the hallway and froze. A thin line of dark smoke was slipping under her bedroom door. Her body went cold. She jumped from the bed and ran toward the door, her bare feet hitting the wooden floor hard. When she opened it, a wave of thick black smoke hit her face. She coughed, trying to breathe, her eyes burning. The hallway was glowing orange at the far end, where the kitchen was. Flames were climbing the curtains like angry red snakes. The air was alive with a strange crackling sound, the sound of wood breaking, glass shattering, and something deep inside the walls moaning from the heat. Panic took over. Maria ran back into her room, grabbed the small framed photo of her husband from the nightstand, and clutched it to her chest. Her mind was spinning. The smoke filled the room faster now, and she could barely see. The heat made her skin sting. She stumbled toward the window, threw it open, and coughed as fresh air rushed in. Her house was small, only one story, so she climbed out carefully, falling to the ground with a thud. When she looked back, the fire had already eaten half the roof. The flames painted the sky red and orange, like a monster roaring in the night. Her neighbors began to rush out, shouting and calling for help. Someone dialed the fire department. But Maria just stood there, barefoot on the cold ground, watching her home, the place where she had lived for 30 years, turn into ashes. I still remember that night. She whispered to herself, her voice trembling. The night everything I loved disappeared. The firefighters arrived within minutes, their trucks screaming through the dark streets. They shouted commands, pulled out hoses, and rushed toward the burning house. Water sprayed in heavy waves, hissing against the fire. But Maria could already sit was too late. The roof collapsed with a loud crash. Sparks flew into the air like angry stars. She sank to her knees. Her body shook. The framed photo slipped from her hands and hit the ground, the glass cracking. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "I'm sorry. I couldn't save you." By the time the fire died down, it was almost morning. The sky was pale gray, and the air smelled like wet ashes and smoke. Maria's hands were black with soot. Her nightgown was torn. A police officer brought her a blanket and asked a few questions, but she barely heard him. Her mind was somewhere else. Everything she owned was gone, her clothes, her furniture, her memories. Even the blue cup in the kitchen was probably melted into nothing. The officer gently suggested she stay with someone for the night. That's when she thought of Daniel, her son, her only family left. She hadn't seen him for almost a year. Their last phone call ended with cold silence after a small argument about money. She didn't even remember what it was about anymore. But now she had nowhere else to go. Maybe this disaster would bring them closer again. Maybe he would open his arms and say, "Mom, I'm here." Maria took a long, shaky breath and nodded to the officer. "I'll go to my son's house," she said quietly. The next morning, she stood near the bus stop with a small bag the neighbors had given her. The sun was rising, but the warmth didn't touch her. She kept staring at the burned ruins of her home in the distance, smoke still rising from it like a dark ghost. Her heart felt empty, but also hopeful. The bus ride to the city was long. She sat by the window watching trees and fields pass by. Her reflection in the glass looked older than she remembered. Her eyes looked tired, but she tried to smile. "It's going to be all right," she whispered to herself. "Daniel will help me." Hours later, she arrived in the city. The air was loud with traffic and horns, so different from her quiet little neighborhood. She found her son's address written on a piece of paper and followed the directions. When she reached his house, she stopped in front of the tall white gate. It was big and beautiful, so much bigger than her burned-down home. For a moment, pride warmed her heart. "My son has done well," she thought. "He's built a good life." She hesitated before pressing the doorbell. A few moments later, the door opened. Daniel stood there, dressed in a formal shirt, his hair neatly combed. His face showed surprise at first, then confusion. "Mom?" he said slowly. "What are you doing here?" Tears welled up in Maria's eyes. She smiled weakly. "Oh, Daniel, there was a fire. My house burned down last night. I didn't know where else to go." Daniel blinked, looking over her shoulder as if hoping someone else was there. "A fire. Oh, that's terrible," he said, his voice uncertain. "Yes," she said softly. "Everything is gone. I thought maybe I could stay here for a while. Just until I figure things out." Daniel didn't answer immediately. He looked uncomfortable. Glancing toward the living room where voices could be heard, his wife and their 2 kids, laughing about something. He cleared his throat. Mom, this is a bad time. We're in the middle of something right now. Maybe you can stay at a hotel for a few days? I can send you some money." Maria stared at him, her smile fading. "A hotel?" She repeated in disbelief. "Daniel, I don't have anything left. I just lost my home." He rubbed his forehead. "I understand, Mom, but it's complicated. You know how things are here. The kids have school, my wife's parents are visiting soon. It's just not easy." For a moment, silence filled the air. Maria's heart felt heavy, heavier than it ever had before. She looked at her son's face, the same face she had kissed goodnight 1,000 times when he was a little boy, and she couldn't believe the distance between them. She nodded slowly. "I understand," she whispered. "I don't want to cause trouble." Daniel sighed with relief, as if her pain made things easier for him. "I'll call you later, okay? We'll figure something out." She turned away before he could see her tears. Her legs felt weak as she walked down the street. The world around her looked blurry. She found a small park nearby and sat on a bench, clutching her burned photo frame in her lap. The wind was cold, but she didn't care. For the first time, she truly felt alone. She looked up at the gray sky and whispered, "Maybe the fire didn't just take my home. Maybe it took my son too." As the sun began to set, she realized she had nowhere to go, no one to turn to. She stood up slowly, staring at the road ahead. Somewhere deep inside, a small voice told her this was not the end, that the fire had only started a new chapter in her life. One she never expected. But for now, she could only walk one step at a time, into the growing darkness. And she didn't know that soon. A stranger would appear in her life, someone who would uncover a truth she was never meant to know. The next morning, Maria woke to the sound of birds singing in the park. Their sweet, almost careless chirping contrasted sharply with the heaviness in her heart. Her small bag, the only thing she had brought from the city, rested at her feet. The air smelled faintly of smoke from the previous night. And the streets were still quiet, except for a few early commuters hurrying past her. Maria rubbed her eyes and tried to shake off the fatigue, but a deep ache stayed in her chest. Her son's words from yesterday echoed over and over. "Maybe you can stay at a hotel. I can send you money." She felt the sting of rejection, sharper than any fire. It wasn't just the loss of her house. She had lost the home of her son's heart as well. The distance between them had always been there, a quiet tension under every phone call, every visit. But last night's disaster had made it painfully clear just how wide that gap had grown. Maria stood slowly and walked toward a small coffee shop nearby. Her steps were heavy, and every sound of her shoes against the sidewalk seemed louder than it should be as she pushed open the door. A warm wave of air hit her face. The smell of coffee and fresh bread was almost comforting, almost like a small hug in the middle of her sorrow. She ordered a cup of black coffee and a slice of toast, then found a quiet corner by the window. She sat down, staring at her reflection in the glass. Her hair was messy, streaked with soot from the fire. Her clothes were wrinkled, her hands still smudged with ash. She looked older than she remembered, older than she wanted to be. She took a sip of coffee, letting the warmth spread through her. But the comfort was short-lived. She couldn't stop thinking about Daniel. How could he be so cold, so distant after everything? She had raised him with love, patience, and care. She had worked hard to give him a good life, even after his father passed away. And now when she needed him the most, it pushed her away. Maria didn't notice the man sitting across the room until he spoke. "Excuse me, ma'am?" he said softly, his voice gentle but firm. "I couldn't help but notice you look troubled. Are you all right?" Startled, Maria turned her head slowly. The man was middle-aged, maybe in his 50s, with kind eyes and a calm presence. He wore a simple suit, not expensive, but neat. He held a small leather briefcase by his side. Maria hesitated. She didn't know this man. She didn't know what he wanted. But something about his expression seemed sincere. I'm fine," she said quietly, though her voice cracked slightly. "Just dealing with some things." He nodded slowly. "I understand. Sometimes life throws unexpected storms at us. I can see it in your eyes. If you don't mind me asking, what happened?" Maria took a deep breath, unsure if she wanted to speak. But the heaviness in her chest made her words spill out before she could stop them. "My house. It burned down last night," she said, her voice trembling. "Everything is gone. I don't have anywhere to go." She paused, the tears threatening to fall. "I went to my son. I thought maybe he could help me, but he didn't want me there. He said it was not a good time." The man's eyes softened. "I see. I'm so sorry. That must have been very hard." He hesitated, then leaned a little closer. "You know, sometimes when we feel abandoned, it's not always what it seems. Life, it complicates people, even those we love." Maria looked at him, puzzled. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he said carefully, "your son, Daniel. Maybe he has reasons for his behavior that you don't yet understand. But right now, you need a place to stay, don't you?" She nodded, swallowing hard. "Yes, I have nowhere." The man smiled faintly. "I can help. I have a small place, not far from here. It's quiet, private. You could stay for a few days until you figure out what to do next." Maria felt a flicker of hope, a warmth she hadn't felt since yesterday. She hesitated. "Why would you help me?" "You don't even know me." "Sometimes helping someone in need is the right thing to do," he said simply. "No strings attached. You just need a safe place to rest." Maria studied him for a moment. There was something strange, almost secretive in his eyes. Not unfriendly, but something that hinted he knew more than he was saying. Still, she felt she had no choice. She nodded slowly. "Thank you. I don't know how to repay you." He waved a hand. "You don't need to. Just come with me." They walked together through the quiet city streets. The man, whose name she later learned was Mr. Harrison, spoke little, letting Maria process her thoughts. Every step Maria took felt heavy, as if the weight of her loss was pressing down on her shoulders. She looked at the tall buildings around her and wondered how life could continue so normally while hers had been shattered. Finally, he reached a small townhouse on a side street. It wasn't fancy, but it looked warm and welcoming. The door opened, and inside it smelled faintly of lavender and old books. Soft sunlight filtered through the curtains. Mr. Harrison led her to a small guest room with a neatly made bed and a window overlooking a tiny garden. "You can stay here for as long as you need," he said. "Take a shower, rest, and eat something. There's food in the kitchen. I'll give you some privacy." Maria felt a wave of relief. For the first time since the fire, she felt safe. She sat on the bed and let herself cry. The tears came freely, releasing the tension she had carried for hours. Her body shook as she remembered her burned home, her lost memories, and her son's cold refusal. Hours later, after eating a simple meal, Mr. Harrison had left for her. Maria sat by the window, staring at the garden. She felt a mix of gratitude and unease. Who was this man, really? Why had he helped her so quickly? Part of her wondered if she could trust him completely. But another part, exhausted and desperate, felt she had no choice. As the evening approached, a soft knock came at the door. Maria opened it to find Mr. Harrison standing there, holding an envelope. "I thought you might need this," he said. She took it, curious. Inside was a photograph. Her breath caught. It was a picture of her house, before the fire, taken from the street. But in the corner of the photograph, barely visible, was a man she didn't recognize, standing near her front gate. Maria's hands trembled. "Who is this?" she whispered. Mr. Harrison didn't answer immediately. He simply looked at her, his eyes serious. "This might explain why your house burned down," he said softly. "But be careful, Maria. Some truths are hard to face." Maria stared at the photo, her mind racing. She had never seen that man before. Why had he been near her house the night of the fire? Could he have caused it? Was it an accident or something more sinister? Fear gripped her tighter than the fire had. She felt a chill run down her spine. I need to see my son," she said suddenly, her voice shaking. "I need to know if he's involved somehow. Maybe he knows something." Mr. Harrison shook his head slightly. "Not yet. You must be careful. Going to him too soon might put you in danger. You need to understand the bigger picture first." Maria's heart pounded. Danger. Bigger picture. Her mind spun. The night of the fire, the man in the photo, her son's strange behavior. Everything seemed connected, but she couldn't yet see how. She sat down on the bed, holding the photograph tightly. Questions swirled in her mind. Who was that man? Why had he been near her house? Why had Mr. Harrison helped her? And most importantly, why had Daniel acted so strangely when she had needed him the most? The room grew dark as the sun set. Shadows stretched across the walls, dancing eerily. Maria's heart beat faster with every passing second. She felt a strange mixture of fear, sadness, and determination. She couldn't just sit and wait. She needed answers. But as she looked out the window at the quiet street below, she realized something terrifying. Someone had been watching her. A shadow moved quickly across the garden, disappearing before she could see clearly. Maria's breath caught. Her hands shook as she gripped the photograph. The night felt heavier now, filled with secrets she didn't yet understand. And she knew deep inside that her journey to uncover the truth was only beginning. The fire hadn't just destroyed her home. It had ignited a chain of events that would change her life forever. And as she sat there, staring into the darkness, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. The truth was coming, whether she was ready or not. Maria couldn't sleep that night. The photograph of her house and the shadowy man near it kept running through her mind like a terrible movie she couldn't pause. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the fire, the smoke, and Daniel's cold face. The room was quiet, but her heart was loud, thumping in her chest as if trying to tell her something urgent. She walked to the window again, staring out at the garden below. The shadows of the trees stretched long in the moonlight. Something felt off. She had always felt safe when she looked at plants, flowers, and trees. Now they seemed sinister, watching, waiting. She could almost hear whispers carried by the wind. Secrets, secrets, secrets. Her thoughts went back to Daniel. Why had he refused her? Why had he seemed scared or nervous instead of concerned? She shook her head. Maybe it was just stress, she told herself. Maybe he had his own life, his own problems, and she had come at a bad time. But deep down, she knew it wasn't just that. Something had changed. Something about him had changed, and it wasn't just in the last year, it felt deeper. Older, hidden dot. The next morning, Maria woke to the sound of a soft knock on her door. It was Mr. Harrison. He held a small envelope in his hand. "I thought you might need this," he said quietly. Maria took it with trembling hands. Inside were several letters neatly folded and a small notebook. "These belong to your husband," he said. Maria froze. "I thought they were lost in the fire," she whispered. "They were meant to be." Mr. Harrison said, "But I found them before the fire. There's information in these that could help you understand what really happened last night." Maria's hands shook as she opened the notebook. The pages were filled with notes, addresses, phone numbers, and some personal observations she didn't recognize. Some notes even mentioned her son, Daniel. Her eyes widened. Daniel, why is he here? Why would her husband's notes mention him? Before she could ask, Mr. Harrison spoke again. "I need to warn you, Maria. Not everything you will find here will be easy to accept. Some truths can hurt more than the fire itself. You should go through these slowly, carefully, and not let anyone else see them yet." Maria nodded silently. Her mind was a whirl of fear, curiosity, and anticipation. She closed the door after Mr. Harrison left and sat on the bed, holding the notebook tightly. Her heart beat faster as she flipped through the pages. There were mentions of people she didn't know, letters from unknown addresses, and even a series of warnings. "Watch Daniel. He's in danger. Keep safe." Her hands trembled. Daniel? In danger. And yet, the way he had reacted to her after the fire didn't feel like fear for himself. Felt like fear of her finding out something. Maria closed her eyes, trying to calm herself. She had no idea what she was about to uncover. But she knew that her life and her son's was connected to something bigger than she could imagine. Later that morning, Maria decided she couldn't wait any longer. She needed answers. She needed to confront Daniel. She packed a small bag with essentials and took a deep breath before stepping out of the townhouse. Mr. Harrison was not there. And she wasn't sure if she should tell him where she was going. His warning echoed in her mind. "Be careful. Going to him too soon might put you in danger." But fear was not the strongest thing in her heart anymore. Determination was. She had lost her home, she had been rejected by her son, and yet something inside her screamed that she had to uncover the truth. The city streets were busy now, filled with people rushing to work, the smell of fresh bread from street vendors mixing with exhaust from cars. Maria clutched the notebook tightly as she approached Daniel's house. She hesitated before ringing the bell. Her hand shook slightly, but she pressed it anyway. The door opened and Daniel stood there, looking surprised once again. "Mom, what are you doing here?" he asked, his voice cautious. "I need to talk to you," Maria said firmly. "I know something is wrong. I know the fire. And I know you're hiding something from me." Daniel's face changed. He looked nervous, almost guilty. "Mom, It's complicated," he said. "You shouldn't be here. This isn't safe." Maria's heart pounded. "Safe, Daniel? I don't care about safe. I care about the truth. Why were you so cold yesterday? Why didn't you help me when my house burned down?" Daniel looked away, swallowing hard. It's not that simple." Maria's eyes filled with tears. "Then make it simple for me. Tell me the truth. What is happening?" Daniel hesitated, then finally said, "You shouldn't know yet. It's dangerous. For both of us. Please, Mom, just trust me." Maria felt a wave of frustration and fear. Dangerous. For both of us. Her mind raced. What could possibly be dangerous about a fire in a house? But she also saw something in his fear that wasn't just about her, but about him and maybe someone else too. Before she could respond, a loud noise came from the Stretta car door slamming. Both Maria and Daniel turned toward the window. A black car was parked outside, its engine running. A man got out, looking around cautiously. He was tall, wearing a dark coat, and his face was partially hidden under a hat. Daniel's face went pale. "Stay inside. Don't move," he whispered, almost shaking. Maria's heart raced. The stranger looked straight at their house, then reached into his coat. Daniel stepped in front of her protectively. "Mom, this is why I didn't want you here. You're not safe. You can't understand yet, but you'll be in danger if you get involved." Maria's mind was spinning. Danger, stranger, secrets, fire, her son's coldness. Everything from the last 2 days suddenly connected in a confusing, frightening pattern. She wanted answers, but the answer seemed farther away than ever. The man outside paused, looked around again, then got back into his car. Daniel's hands shook. "That man? He's been following me for weeks," he whispered. "And now he's looking for you too. Mom, I didn't want you to get hurt." Maria's stomach dropped. "Following you? Why? Who is he?" Daniel shook his head. "I can't say yet. Not everything is safe to say, but the fire, the notes, your husband, it's all connected. And now that you're involved, you're in danger too." Maria's mind was racing, her heart thumping. She clutched the notebook tightly, her hands sweaty. She realized that the story her husband had left in those notes was bigger than she had ever imagined. Bigger than a fire, bigger than her lost home. And Daniel's behavior, his coldness, spirit, was all tied to something she wasn't ready to see yet. Her eyes filled with tears. But this time they were not just of sorrow, they were of determination. She would uncover the truth, no matter the danger. She had survived a fire, been rejected by her son, and faced the unknown. She could face this too. Daniel stepped back, letting her take a deep breath. "Mom, I can't protect you if you don't listen to me. You need to trust me, at least for now, but soon. Soon you'll understand why everything happened the way it did." Maria nodded slowly. "I'll trust you, for now. But I need answers soon, Daniel. I need to know the truth." Daniel swallowed hard, his face pale. "The truth is not easy, and it will change everything you thought you knew about our family." At that moment, the street outside grew quiet again. The black car had disappeared, but Maria could still feel the sense that someone, something, was watching her. The fire had been just the beginning. Now she was standing at the edge of something much bigger. Something dangerous, something she couldn't ignore. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the city, Maria and Daniel sat in tense silence. The notebook lay open between them, filled with questions, warnings, and secrets. Maria realized that the journey to uncover the truth would not be easy. It would test her courage, her heart, and her trust in the only family she had left. And she knew, deep inside, that the next revelation would shock her in ways she could never imagine. The next morning, the sunlight spilled gently through the curtains, painting the small guest room with a warm, golden light. Maria woke slowly, her mind heavy with thoughts from the night before. The photograph of the man near her burned house, Daniel's sudden fear, and the mysterious notebook left by her husband all mixed together in a swirl she could not untangle. She rubbed her tired eyes and stared at the notebook on the bed beside her. She knew today would be the day she tried to understand it all, even if the truth frightened her. After a small breakfast that Mr. Harrison had quietly left on the table, Maria sat on the edge of the bed and opened the notebook again. Each page was filled with neat, small handwriting notes that her husband had kept hidden for years. Some of the notes were mundane, about bills or groceries. Others, however, were different. They were warnings, secrets, and strange observations. Her husband had written about people she didn't recognize, places she had never visited, and one entry even mentioned her son. "Daniel doesn't know the danger he is in. Keep him safe. The fire is only the beginning." Maria's heart beat faster as she read the words. The fire is only the beginning. The thought made her stomach twist. How could the fire be the beginning? It had destroyed everything she loved. But clearly, her husband had known something she didn't. Something that might explain Daniel's sudden coldness and fear. She spent hours reading the notes, trying to piece together the puzzle. One entry mentioned a man named Victor, described as dangerous and cunning. someone who had been watching her family for months. Another note warned about people who followed too closely and smiled too nicely. Maria's hands shook as she realized that the man in the black coat she had seen outside Daniel's house might be Victor. A loud knock at the door made her jump. Daniel's voice came from the other side. "Mom, are you okay?" Maria quickly closed the notebook and tried to compose herself. "I'm fine," she said softly. "Just thinking." The door opened slowly. Daniel stepped inside looking nervous. He avoided her eyes, pacing slightly. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, "about what's really happening. About the fire and everything your husband wrote in that notebook." Maria's hands gripped the notebook tightly. "I need to know, Daniel. I can't sit here and wait anymore. I need to understand what's going on." Daniel sighed deeply and sank into a chair. His shoulders were tense and his face looked pale. "Mom, I should have told you earlier. I wanted to. I really did. But I couldn't. I didn't want you to get involved. To get hurt. You see, Victor? That man, he's dangerous. He's been watching our family for a long time. He wanted something from us, something your husband tried to protect." Maria's eyes widened. Protect from what? Why didn't you tell me? Why push me away when I needed you the most? Daniel looked down, ashamed. "I was trying to keep you safe. That's why I acted the way I did yesterday. I knew if you came here, he might notice. And once Victor notices, he doesn't stop." Maria's stomach tightened. She had felt his coldness as rejection, but now she understood it was fear, not cruelty. Fear for her. Fear for both of them. "So, the fire. It wasn't an accident?" she asked cautiously, almost afraid of the answer. Daniel shook his head. "I don't know for sure yet, but I think it wasn't random. I've been trying to find out, but every lead seems to disappear. And now that you're here, Victor might connect the dots. That's why you have to be careful." Maria's mind raced. She had survived a fire, lost her home, faced rejection from her son. And yet now she was being told that someone dangerous had been watching them. Her hands shook as she opened the notebook again, reading passages she had skipped before. Her husband had written about meeting Victor several times, about noticing suspicious behavior, and even about Daniel unknowingly getting involved in something. Dangerous because of his work and connections. Maria's eyes filled with tears. "Daniel, why didn't you ever tell me? Why didn't your father?" Daniel's voice was quiet, almost broken. "Mom, your husband. He tried to protect you too. He didn't want you to know, to be scared. He thought if he kept it secret, you would be safe. And I wanted to tell you, but I didn't know how to explain it. Every time I tried, something else happened, and it kept getting worse." Maria felt a deep ache in her chest. Years of secrecy, lies, and danger had built a wall between her and her son. And now it seemed that wall was even higher than she imagined. "Mom, you need to trust me," Daniel said, finally looking her in the eye. "I need your help, but you can't let Victor know you're involved. We have to be careful. He's watching everything, everyone. Even small mistakes could be dangerous." Maria nodded, swallowing hard. Her heart pounded with fear, but also with determination. She would help her son. She would uncover the truth her husband had tried to protect them from, and she would face whatever danger was coming. Just then, her phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "You shouldn't be looking. Stop before it's too late." Maria froze. She felt her blood run cold. She looked at Daniel, who also looked alarmed. "Mom, that's him. Victor. He knows you're involved now. And he's warning you. Or threatening you." Her hands shook as she stared at the screen. Fear, anger, and determination surged through her. She knew she couldn't stop now. She had come too far, lost too much, and discovered too many secrets to turn back. Daniel grabbed the notebook and opened it to a section they had overlooked together. It detailed a series of strange events leading up to the fire, including unusual visitors, threats, and mentions of people in their lives who might not be trustworthy. One name kept appearing: Victor. Maria realized that Victor had been planning something for a long time, targeting their family. And the fire was just the beginning. The room was silent except for the ticking of the clock. Maria's hands were still shaking, but she felt a spark of courage. She would not run. She would not hide. She had to understand the full story. Daniel stood and looked at her with a mix of fear and pride. "Mom, I'm scared too. But we have to face this together. Whatever comes next, we have to be ready." Maria nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She knew the fire had destroyed her home, but it had also destroyed the old sense of safety she had always felt. Now she had to face a new kind of danger, one that was invisible, unpredictable, and closer than she had ever imagined. That evening, as darkness fell over the city, Maria and Daniel began going through the notebook page by page, cross-referencing addresses, dates, and people mentioned in the notes. They realized that Victor had been manipulating events for months, keeping their family in danger without them even knowing. Suddenly, there was a soft knock at the door. Maria's heart skipped a beat. She looked at Daniel. "Who is it?" Daniel shook his head. "I don't know. Be careful." Maria slowly opened the door. Standing there was a young woman, maybe in her late 20s, with nervous eyes and a small backpack. "Are you Maria?" she asked quietly. I have information about Victor, I think. I can help." Maria felt a chill run down her spine. The fire, the stranger, Daniel's fear, the mysterious notes, it all led to this moment. She looked at Daniel, who nodded silently. The young woman stepped inside, glancing around nervously. "I shouldn't be here long. He's watching, always watching. But I know what he's planning, and you need to know before it's too late." Maria's hands shook as she realized that the story was bigger than she had imagined. The fire had destroyed her home, but it had also uncovered secrets, lies, and dangers that had been lurking in the shadows for years. As the young woman began to speak, Maria felt a mixture of fear and hope. The truth was finally coming. But it was more dangerous than she had ever imagined, and deep inside, she knew one thing: nothing would ever be the same again. Maria felt her heart pounding as the young woman stepped further into the room. Her eyes were wide with fear, darting toward the window, toward the street outside, as if she expected someone to appear at any moment. She introduced herself in a quiet voice. "My name is Lila," she said. I used to work with Victor. I know things that could explain everything that has happened to your family." Maria's hands gripped the notebook tightly. "Explain everything." "Lila, what do you mean? Why are you here?" Lila hesitated, swallowing hard. "I can't stay long. Victor, he watches everyone connected to him. He's dangerous. I left his organization a year ago, but I know he has been keeping track of your husband and Daniel. The fire. The man outside yesterday, that was a warning. Victor wants something from your family, something your husband knew, and now he knows you're involved." Maria felt a chill run down her spine. She had suspected danger, but hearing it from someone who had been close to Victor made it real. She looked at Daniel, who nodded solemnly. "It's true, Mom," he said quietly. "Victor has been following me for months, but he's always been careful, hiding his tracks. But now, since the fire, he knows we're paying attention." Lila pulled out a small notebook from her backpack. She handed it to Maria. "This has information Victor doesn't want you to know. Addresses, names, and dates. Everything he's been doing for years. But you have to read it carefully. If he finds out you have it, it could be dangerous for all of you." Maria's hands shook as she took the notebook. She felt a mixture of fear and determination. She had survived a fire, faced rejection from her son, and discovered her husband's secrets. Now, the danger was real and immediate. But she also knew that to protect her family, she had to understand everything. "Why are you helping us?" Maria asked, her voice trembling. Lila's eyes flickered with sadness. "Because I know what he's capable of. I used to follow orders. I helped him once. But I couldn't live with it anymore. I couldn't watch innocent people get hurt. You and your son. You don't deserve this. That's why I'm here. But we have to act fast. Daniel took a deep breath. Mom, we need a plan. Victor won't stop until he gets what he wants. And I don't even know what that is yet. But I think it's connected to your husband's work and something he discovered years ago. We need to find out what it is before it's too late. Maria nodded slowly, feeling the weight of the responsibility settle on her shoulders. Fear was still there, but it was mixed with determination. She had to protect her son. She had to uncover the truth. And she had to face Victor, no matter what it took. Lila opened her notebook and began explaining what she knew. Victor has been involved in illegal activities for years. Your husband discovered his plans and tried to stop him. That's why he left the notes. To protect you and Daniel. But Victor is clever. He covers his tracks, manipulates people, and eliminates threats without leaving evidence. The fire, it may have been his attempt to scare you, to test your reaction. But now, since you're here, he knows you're paying attention. He may come after you directly. Maria's hands shook as she listened. The reality of the danger hit her harder than she had imagined. The fire, the threats, the stranger outside Daniel's house, it was all connected. And now her family's life was at stake. We need to be careful, Daniel said. We can't trust anyone outside of this room. Victor has eyes everywhere. We need to find out what he wants, and then we need to stop him before he can hurt anyone else. Lila nodded. I can help, but we have to act quickly. Victor's men are everywhere. He has people watching streets, offices, even homes. He knows how to make people disappear. We have to gather information quietly and plan our next steps carefully. And Mom, you must be careful. You can't confront him directly. Not yet. Maria felt a lump in her throat. She had faced a fire, rejection, and fear. But the thought of confronting Victor directly terrified her. Yet she knew she couldn't hide forever. The safety of her son and herself depended on understanding the full picture. Where do we start? Maria asked, her voice firm despite the fear in her heart. Lila handed her a map marked with several locations. These are places Victor uses. Some are safe houses, some are places he has left evidence of his activities. We need to go through them carefully and find out what he's planning next. But we can't go all at once. Victor watches patterns. He notices small details. We have to be smart. Daniel looked at his mother. Mom, I know it's dangerous, but we have to do this. If we don't, Victor will keep coming, and he won't stop until he destroys everything our family has left. Are you ready? Maria nodded slowly. I'm ready. I have to be. That night they planned their first visit to one of the marked locations. It was a small warehouse on the outskirts of the city. According to Lila, Victor used it as a storage place and sometimes held secret meetings there. The streets were quiet as they drove, tension thick in the car. Maria gripped her son's hand tightly, feeling both fear and determination. When they reached the warehouse, it was dark and silent. The building looked abandoned, but the faint glow of lights inside suggested otherwise. Daniel and Maria followed Lila's instructions carefully, staying in the shadows. Every sound, a creaking door, a shifting shadow. A distant car horn made Maria's heart race. They peered through a cracked window and saw men moving inside, arranging boxes and whispering in low voices. One of them looked familiar. Maria couldn't place him yet, but something about his posture, the way he moved, made her uneasy. She swallowed hard, trying to calm her racing heart. Mom, stay quiet, Daniel whispered. We're only watching for now. We need to see what they're doing before we make any moves. Hours passed as they observed from the shadows. Maria could barely breathe, her hands clammy and her chest tight. She felt as though the walls of the world were closing in on her. But then she saw something that made her blood run cold. A stack of papers marked with her husband's handwriting, being examined by one of Victor's men. Maria's stomach dropped. That's my husband's work, she whispered. He was right. Victor is after something he discovered. Daniel looked grim. We need to get that notebook back. That's proof. That's evidence. But we have to be careful. If they catch us, it's over. Lila nodded. We'll wait until nightfall. Then we'll sneak in and take what we need. But remember, Victor has eyes everywhere. Any mistake, and he'll know we're involved. We have to be perfect." As the sun set, casting long shadows across the city, Maria realized something terrifying. The fire had been just the beginning. The danger was real, immediate, and growing. Every step they took from this point forward would be a gamble. And yet, she felt a spark of courage. She had survived loss, rejection, and fear. She could face Victor. She had too. That night, as they prepared for their first mission, Maria couldn't sleep. She thought about the fire, the man outside Daniel's house, the notes from her husband, and the danger that now surrounded them. The world she had known, the quiet, safe life she had built, was gone. In its place was a shadowy world of secrets, lies, and threats. And deep down, she knew one thing. The next steps they took could change everything. The truth was coming, and when it did, it would shatter everything they thought they knew. Night had fallen, and the city streets were silent except for the occasional hum of distant traffic. Maria, Daniel, and Lila crouched behind a line of abandoned boxes in an alley near Victor's warehouse. The building loomed before them, dark and intimidating, the faint glow of interior lights visible through cracked windows. The air was thick with tension, and Maria could feel her heart pounding in her chest, echoing the fear she had tried to suppress all day. "We need to be careful," Lila whispered, her voice barely audible. "Victor's men are always watching. One mistake, and they'll know we're here." Daniel nodded. "We wait for the guards to change shifts. That's our window. Then we move fast. No hesitation." Maria swallowed hard, gripping the small flashlight Lila had given her. She tried to calm her racing thoughts. Her hands were shaking in the memory of the fire, the stranger outside their house, and the notebook's secrets pressed on her mind. But she also felt a strange sense of determination. She had survived so much already. She could survive this. She had to dot as they waited. Shadows shifted inside the warehouse. Two men emerged from the side door, moving slowly and talking quietly. Lila checked her watch. "Now," she whispered. They moved quickly, sticking to the shadows, their footsteps silent on the cold concrete. Maria's breath came in short, shallow gasps as they approached the entrance. The side door was slightly ajar, and Lila pushed it gently, creating barely a sound. The dim light inside revealed stacks of boxes and papers, and Maria immediately spotted a table with documents that looked familiar. "There," Lila whispered, pointing to a pile of papers on the table. "That's your husband's work. We need to get it." Maria's heart raced. She could see the handwriting clearly, notes, sketches, and codes that her husband had hidden from her years ago. She had no doubt that these documents were the key to understanding Victor's plan. Daniel motioned for her to stay low. "I'll go first," he said, his voice steady but tense. He crept toward the table, careful to stay out of the light. Maria followed closely behind, holding the flashlight just enough to illuminate the papers without attracting attention. The sound of footsteps echoed from the far end of the warehouse. One of Victor's men was coming back. Lila froze. "Hide," she whispered urgently. They ducked behind a stack of boxes just as the guard passed by. Maria's heart pounded in her ears, and she could feel her palms growing sweaty. Every second felt like an eternity. Once the guard disappeared, Daniel moved toward the table again. He grabbed the stack of papers and motioned for Maria and Lila to follow, just as they were about to retreat. A loud crash came from the other side of the room. A box had fallen over, spilling its contents. Victor's men shouted, and the warehouse erupted in chaos. Maria's stomach dropped. "Run!" Daniel yelled. They bolted toward the side exit, clutching the stolen documents tightly. The men inside shouted and gave chase. Maria's legs ached, but adrenaline pushed her forward. She could hear her own heartbeat, loud and frantic. As she ran through the dark alley toward the safety of the shadows, they reached a narrow passage behind the warehouse. And Daniel slowed them down. "We're not safe yet," he whispered. "We need to keep moving until we're far from here." Maria could barely catch her breath. Her chest felt tight and her legs trembled, but she refused to stop. The weight of the notebook and the papers in her arms reminded her of the stakes. If Victor got them back, everything would be lost: the evidence, the truth, and their chance to protect themselves. After what felt like hours, they finally stopped behind an abandoned building. Maria collapsed onto the ground, gasping for air. Lila sat beside her, equally exhausted. Daniel checked the papers quickly to make sure they had everything. "We got it," he said quietly, relief evident in his voice. "All of it." Maria held the documents close, feeling a sense of triumph mixed with fear. They had succeeded, but she knew this was only the beginning. Victor would not give up so easily. He would come after them, and soon. As they rested, Maria flipped through the stolen documents, her hands trembling. Codes, names, dates, and sketches filled the pages. One particular entry caught her eye: a map of locations, marked with red circles and annotations in her husband's handwriting. "Daniel, Lila. Look at this," she whispered. "These are all places connected to Victor. And some are close to where we live." Daniel's face darkened. "Yes. And that means he could be watching us right now." Maria felt a chill run down her spine. They were safe for the moment, but Victor's reach was long and dangerous. Every step they took from here on would require caution, intelligence, and courage. Lila leaned closer. "We need to plan our next move carefully. Victor will notice the theft. He'll know we have the documents. And he'll try to retaliate." Maria's mind raced. The fire, the threats, the documents, the man outside Daniel's house, they were all connected. She realized that her husband had known about Victor for years and had left behind clues to protect them. But Victor was clever, and the danger was far from over. Daniel sighed. "We need to find out what Victor wants. If we can understand his plan, we can stop him. And we can protect Mom, but we have to act fast." Maria nodded, determination hardening in her chest. Fear was still there, but it was now mixed with resolve. She had faced loss, rejection, and danger before. Now she would face Victor, too. She had to. For Daniel. For herself. For the truth. The night was silent around them, but Maria could feel the tension pressing in from every direction. Victor was out there, watching, waiting, and planning. And she knew that their next steps would bring them even closer to the secrets that had destroyed their lives as they made their way back to the townhouse. Maria glanced at the dark streets. Every shadow seemed alive, every sound amplified. She knew Victor would not stop until he got what he wanted. And now they had the evidence that could either save them or put them in greater danger than ever. Maria's thoughts drifted to her burned home. The photograph of the mysterious man and the notebook from her husband. Everything was connected, and everything was leading to a confrontation she had not yet imagined. She felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her, but she also felt the fire of courage burning inside. They reached the safety of the townhouse, exhausted but unharmed. Lila immediately began organizing the stolen documents, while Daniel secured the house, making sure no one was watching. Maria sat quietly, her hands clutching the papers, her mind racing. The fire had destroyed her home, but it had also ignited something inside her, a determination to uncover the truth, to protect her family, and to face the danger that Victor represented. She knew the road ahead would be perilous, filled with fear, deception, and uncertainty. But she was ready as she looked out the window at the quiet city streets. Maria realized that nothing would ever be the same again. The fire had been just the beginning, and now the real danger was only starting, and deep down, she knew one thing with certainty: the truth was coming, and when it did, it would change everything. The morning light filtered through the curtains of the townhouse, but Maria barely noticed it. Her eyes were fixed on the pile of documents spread across the small table. Daniel and Lila were sitting beside her, leaning over the papers, analyzing every line, every note, every sketch. The air was thick with tension, the silence between them heavy, each lost in thought. Maria's hands trembled slightly as she picked up a page marked with her husband's handwriting. It was a list of names, people she had never heard of. some with addresses and phone numbers, others with notes that suggested danger. One name caught her eye repeatedly: Victor. Beside it, her husband had written, "Watch him closely. He will not stop. He wants what we know." Daniel leaned closer, his brow furrowed. "Mom, these notes show that Victor has been planning this for a long time. He's not just after us randomly, he's after information your husband discovered. Something valuable, something that could ruin him if it gets out." Maria swallowed hard, her throat dry. What could it be? What did my husband know that's so important? Leela looked grave. "From what I've seen, Victor is involved in illegal activities. But this is bigger. Your husband must have discovered something that could expose him completely. And that's why the fire happened. It was a warning. Victor wanted to intimidate you, to test if anyone was paying attention." Maria felt a chill run down her spine. The fire, the man outside Daniel's house, the threatening message, it all made sense now. Victor had orchestrated it all. And they had barely escaped with the documents. Daniel leaned back, running his hands through his hair. "We need to understand what he's planning next. These documents might have the key. If we can piece it together, we can stop him." Maria picked up another set of papers. These were coded, filled with strange symbols and numbers. Her husband had clearly tried to hide the information. "Daniel, Lila, I think this is the part we need to decode. It's what Victor wants." Lila nodded. "Yes, but we need to be careful. If he notices us trying to figure this out, he'll come after us directly. We can't let him know we're on to him yet." For hours they worked quietly, the three of them huddled over the papers. Maria felt her mind straining as she tried to make sense of the codes, the names, and the maps. Every new discovery made her heart race. She realized how clever Victor was and how much danger they were truly in. Finally, as the sun began to set, Daniel's eyes widened. "Mom, look at this." He pointed to a section of the notebook with detailed notes about a shipment, dates, and locations. "Victor is planning something big. He's moving something valuable. And your husband had information about it." Maria's stomach tightened. Something valuable. What could it be? Lila leaned closer. It could be money, documents, evidence, something that could destroy him if it got into the wrong hands. And that's exactly what he's afraid of. That's why he started the fire. That's why he's been following you, Daniel. And now you, Maria. Maria's hands shook as she absorbed the information. The danger was closer than ever. Victor was not just a shadow in the background. He was active, watching and planning his next move. Suddenly, there was a soft sound from outside, a rustling, a shadow moving past the window. Maria froze. Her heart pounded in her chest. "Daniel." "Someone's outside," she whispered. Daniel grabbed a small flashlight and cautiously approached the window. He peeked through the curtains, his face pale. "Mom, it's him. Victor's man. He's watching the house." Maria's stomach dropped. She felt fear claw at her chest, but she forced herself to stay calm. She had survived so much already, she could face this too. Lila whispered urgently, "We need to act fast. He can't see you with the documents. If he realizes you have them, he'll come inside." Daniel nodded. "Mom, follow me. We'll move the papers somewhere safe." They quickly gathered the documents and moved them to a hidden compartment in the townhouse. A small safe Daniel had installed years ago for emergencies. Maria's hands were trembling, but she felt a sense of urgency and purpose. They were protecting something important. Something her husband had sacrificed his life's work to keep safe. After securing the documents, they sat down, catching their breath. Maria's mind was racing. "Daniel, why didn't you ever tell me about this? Why keep me in the dark?" Daniel looked down, his hands clasped tightly. "Mom, I wanted to protect you. Every time I tried to tell you, something else happened. Victor is clever. He manipulates people, situations, and emotions. If I told you, you would have been in danger long ago. I'm sorry I pushed you away, but I had no choice." Maria felt a mixture of anger and understanding. Her son had been cold and distant, but now she saw it was fear, not rejection. Fear for her, fear for both of them. I understand. Daniel, adieu. But now, we have to act. We can't let him win. Lila nodded. Yes, but we need to be smart. Victor is dangerous, and he won't hesitate to hurt anyone who gets in his way. We need to plan our next move carefully. Hours passed as they strategized, using the maps, notes, and codes from the documents. They realized Victor was planning a major meeting at one of the locations marked in the papers. It could be their chance to gather evidence, understand his plans, and finally stop him. But it was risky if they were caught. The consequences could be deadly. Maria felt a mixture of fear and determination. She had survived a fire, rejection, and lies. She had uncovered secrets that threatened her life and her family. And now they were about to confront the man who had caused it all as night fell over the city. The tension in the townhouse grew. Shadows stretched across the walls, the faint glow of streetlights casting eerie patterns. Maria held the documents close, her mind racing with possibilities. Victor was out there, watching, waiting, and planning his next move. Daniel turned to her, his face serious. Mom, tomorrow we go to the location. We find out what Victor is planning, and we finally get the answers. But we have to be careful. One wrong move, and it's over. Maria nodded, her heart pounding. Fear was still there, but so was courage. She had survived too much to turn back now. The fire had destroyed her home, but it had also ignited something inside her, a determination to uncover the truth. Protect her family and face the danger that Victor represented. As they prepared for the night ahead, Maria realized one thing. The secrets her husband had left behind were leading them closer to the truth. And when they finally confronted Victor, nothing would ever be the same again. The fire had been just the beginning. Now, the real battle was about to begin. The night was heavy and silent as Maria, Daniel, and Lila made their way toward the location marked in the documents. The streets were almost deserted, and the faint glow of streetlights cast long, twisting shadows across the pavement. Every step they took was calculated, careful, as though even a single misstep could alert Victor to their presence. Maria clutched the small bag holding the stolen documents tightly to her chest. Her heart pounded, not just from fear but from anticipation. After days of danger, secrets, and shadows, they were finally approaching the moment when the truth could be revealed. Stay close, Daniel whispered, his voice tense but steady. We don't know how many people are there or what Victor has planned. One mistake, and it's over. Lila nodded silently. We'll stick to the shadows. Watch everything. Listen carefully. Take notes. We need proof of what he's doing, and we need to find out what he wants from your family. The building loomed ahead, a large, abandoned factory on the outskirts of the city. It looked empty from the outside, but Maria could see faint lights flickering through cracks in the boarded-up windows. Shadows moved inside, and muffled voices echoed faintly. Carried through the cold night air, Maria's stomach tightened. She felt fear rising, but she also felt a strange surge of determination. She had survived the fire, threats, and lies. She could face this. She had to. Daniel carefully guided them to a small gap in the fence, and they slipped inside, sticking to the shadows. The air smelled faintly of oil and dust, and Maria could hear the creaking of old metal and the soft scurrying of rats in the corners. Every sound made her pulse quicken. They crouched near a broken window and peered inside. The room was dimly lit, with several men gathered around a large table covered with papers and maps. Victor sat at the head of the table, his face partially hidden in shadows. His posture was calm, confident, almost chilling. He spoke quietly, giving orders to the men around him, who nodded and scribbled notes diligently. Maria's eyes widened. She could see the intensity of the planning, the precision of the operation. This was bigger than she had imagined. And now they were witnessing it firsthand. Lila whispered, Mom, stay low, watch everything, but don't make a sound. We need proof, not confrontation. Not yet. Maria nodded silently, her hands trembling slightly. She felt a cold sweat running down her back. The documents in her bag seemed heavier now, full of secrets that could destroy Victor if they fell into the right hands. But she also knew that any mistake could cost their lives. They observed Victor and his men for what felt like hours, carefully noting movements, discussions, and plans. Every detail seemed connected: dresses, dates, shipments. Maria realized that Victor's reach extended far beyond what they had imagined. He had eyes and ears everywhere. He had been planning for years, and the fire had been only a small part of a much larger plan. Suddenly, one of the men at the table picked up a folder with documents that looked very familiar. Maria's stomach sank. She recognized the handwriting. It was her husband's. Victor held the folder, flipping through it carefully, and Maria felt her hands clenched tightly around her own bag. He found the papers, Daniel whispered, his face tense. "We need to get closer. We need to see what he's planning." Maria swallowed hard. She felt fear twisting in her chest, but she also felt courage burning inside her. They had come this far. They couldn't stop now. They carefully moved closer, sticking to the shadows. Maria's heart raced with every step. The factory floor was littered with crates and old machinery, perfect for hiding but also treacherous. One wrong step and they could alert the men inside. As they neared the table, Victor looked up suddenly and Maria froze. Their eyes met for a brief moment and she felt a chill run down her spine. Victor's gaze was sharp, calculating, and somehow terrifying. He did not recognize them, but Maria felt that he could sense their presence. An instinct honed from years of manipulation and power. Lila motioned for them to stay low. "Keep moving," she whispered urgently. "We're almost there." They crouched behind a stack of crates, peering over just enough to see Victor and the documents. Victor was speaking quietly, giving instructions to one of his men. "Make sure everything is ready. The shipment leaves in 3 days. And if anyone interferes, they disappear. No mistakes. No witnesses." Maria's stomach tightened. 3 days? They had only 3 days to stop him. The urgency of the situation hit her like a punch to the chest. If they didn't act fast, the opportunity to prevent disaster would vanish suddenly. One of the men shifted, making a loud metallic noise. Maria froze, holding her breath. Victor's head snapped toward the sound, and Maria felt a wave of panic. She glanced at Daniel, who was tense. Ready to act, Victor frowned, but then seemed to dismiss the sound, returning to his documents. Maria exhaled slowly, her heart still racing. They were close, but the danger was palpable. One wrong move could ruin everything. Lila whispered, "We need to leave before he notices anything. We have enough for now. Take notes. Memorize everything. This is our chance to plan properly." Maria nodded, reluctantly agreeing. They moved back toward the fence, careful to stay in the shadows. Every step was tense, every sound amplified in her mind. When they finally slipped out of the factory grounds, Maria felt her legs trembling with relief and exhaustion. Outside, the cold night air hit their faces and Maria took a deep breath. "We did it," she whispered. "We saw what he's planning. We know now." Daniel nodded, though his face was grim. "Yes, but this is only the beginning. Victor will act soon. We have 3 days. We need a plan and we need allies. But who can we trust?" Lila's face was serious. "Mom, Daniel, you have no idea how powerful he is. Victor doesn't just intimidate people, he destroys them. We have to be smart, precise, and careful. One mistake, and it's over." Maria felt a cold fear settle in her chest, but alongside it was determination. She had survived fire, rejection, lies, and threats. Now, she was facing the man responsible for years of secrets and danger. She had to be strong. She had to protect Daniel. She had to confront the truth as they made their way back to the townhouse. Maria thought about the documents, the codes, and Victor's plans. The fire had been only the beginning. The danger was real, immediate, and growing. And she knew that the next few days would determine everything: her family, their safety, and the truth her husband had fought to protect. They reached the safety of the townhouse, exhausted but alive. Maria felt the weight of the situation pressing down on her. Victor was powerful, intelligent, and ruthless. But now they had knowledge that could give them a chance to fight back. That night, as Maria lay awake, she couldn't stop thinking about Victor's cold eyes, the stolen documents, and the ticking clock. The shipment in 3 days. The danger closing in and deep inside. She knew one thing. The fire had destroyed her past. But now, the real battle for her family's future had begun. The sun rose faintly over the city, casting a gray light over the streets. Maria couldn't sleep. Her mind was racing with everything they had discovered, the documents, the codes, Victor's shipment, and the looming danger. Daniel and Lila were also awake, quietly reviewing the stolen papers, trying to make sense of Victor's plan. The clock was ticking, and the three of them knew that every hour brought them closer to a confrontation that could change everything. "Mom," Daniel said softly, breaking the silence, "we only have 3 days until the shipment leaves. If we don't act, it could be too late. Victor will get what he wants, and there's no guarantee anyone will be safe after that." Maria's hands trembled slightly as she reached for the notebook. I know. But we have the documents. We can use them to stop him. We just need a plan, and we need to be smart." Lila nodded. "Victor is ruthless, clever, and patient. He has men everywhere. One wrong move, and he'll know we're onto him. We need to be careful, precise, and coordinated. If we can intercept the shipment and gather evidence, we can expose him. But it won't be easy." The next 2 days were a whirlwind of preparation. Maria, Daniel, and Lila studied the maps and codes in detail, cross-referencing addresses, times, and locations. They memorized every route, every guard shift, every weak point they could find. Maria felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. If anything went wrong, it would be her fault. On the evening before the shipment, they packed small bags with essentials: flashlights, cameras, notebooks, and some food. Maria checked and rechecked everything. The tension in the air was palpable. Every sound outside the townhouse made her jump. Every shadow seemed alive with threat. Finally, night fell. They made their way toward the warehouse district where Victor's shipment was scheduled to move. The streets were quiet, but Maria felt the weight of eyes watching them. She knew Victor had men everywhere. They couldn't afford any mistakes. As they approached the warehouse, Maria's heart raced. The building was larger than before, fortified with gates and fences. Victor's men were moving around, checking equipment, loading boxes, and communicating in low voices. Maria crouched behind a stack of crates, gripping the documents tightly. "This is it," Daniel whispered. "We need to be fast and silent. We go in, get the evidence, and leave. No unnecessary risks." Maria nodded, her palms sweating. Fear mixed with determination. She had survived fire, betrayal, and danger. She could face this too. She had to. They slipped inside through a side entrance that Lila had discovered during their previous reconnaissance. The air inside smelled of dust and metal. Shadows stretched across the warehouse. And every movement of Victor's men made Maria's heart pound. They moved quietly toward the main storage area. Boxes stacked high blocked a line of sight, perfect for hiding, but treacherous if they made a mistake. Maria held her breath as they approached the shipment area. Victor was there, overseeing the operation, speaking quietly but firmly to his men. Maria recognized the boxes. They were marked with codes matching the documents her husband had written. This was what they had been waiting for. "Stay low," Lila whispered. "We need evidence, not confrontation. Take pictures, notes, everything we can." Maria's hands shook as she pulled out a small camera and began photographing the boxes, the labels, and the activity. Daniel recorded the movements of Victor's men, noting their shifts and positions. Lila carefully examined documents strewn across a nearby table, memorizing details and writing them down quickly. Suddenly, a creak echoed from the floor above. One of Victor's men glanced toward the noise, his eyes narrowing. Maria froze, heart pounding. Victor's gaze swept the room briefly, sharp and calculating. Maria felt a cold wave of fear. They had been spotted. Daniel grabbed her arm. "Move now," he hissed. They ducked behind crates, moving silently but quickly. The men around them were alert, voices rising in tension. Maria's pulse raced. They had only seconds to escape without being caught. They reached the side exit and slipped out into the dark alley. Maria could hear shouts behind them as Victor's men realized something was amiss. "Run!" Daniel yelled. They sprinted through the alleyways, the stolen evidence safe, but their hearts pounding. Once they were a block away, they paused to catch their breath. Maria's chest heaved, her body trembling. We got it," she whispered, clutching the documents. "We have proof." Leila nodded. "Yes, but Victor will retaliate. He won't let this go easily. We need to stay hidden, plan our next step, and expose him before he can act." Maria looked at her son, his face pale but resolute. "Daniel, we're close. We know his plan, his shipment, everything. But what if he comes after us next?" Daniel shook his head. "Mom, we can't think about that now. We have to focus. We have evidence. We can stop him, but we need a plan. And we need allies, people who can help us go public, go to the authorities, and make sure Victor can't escape justice." Maria nodded, determination hardening inside her. Fear was still there, but it was now a driving force. She had survived fire, threats, and secrets. Now, she would survive Victor too, for her family, for the truth. The next day they contacted trusted friends and legal advisors, carefully revealing what they had discovered. They presented the documents, codes, and photographs explaining Victor's activities and the danger he represented. The authorities began to investigate. And plans were made to intercept Victor's shipment before it could leave the city. But Victor was clever and unpredictable. Maria knew the next hours would be critical. Every movement, every decision could determine whether they would succeed or fail. As night fell again, Maria sat quietly, reviewing the documents. She thought about her husband, his warnings, and the fire that had started all of this. She felt a mixture of grief, anger, and determination. Everything had led to this moment, the chance to stop Victor and protect her family. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "You think you can stop me? You're too late. I see everything. I know everything." Maria's hands shook. Fear surged through her, but she forced herself to breathe deeply. Victor was dangerous, but now they had knowledge, proof, and allies. She had survived too much to back down. Now Don Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. "Mom, we're ready. Whatever happens, we face it together. We stop him now, or we lose everything." Maria nodded, feeling the fire of determination burning inside her. The final countdown had begun. Victor's shipment, his plans. And the danger closing in, they were all moments away from coming to a head. And deep inside, she knew one thing. The next hours would decide everything. The truth was about to be revealed. Night had fully fallen, casting long shadows across the city. Maria, Daniel, and Leila were stationed near the docks where Victor's shipment was scheduled to move. The documents, photographs, and codes they had stolen from the warehouse were carefully hidden, ready to be handed to the authorities at the right moment. The tension in the air was thick. Each sound, each distant shout made Maria's heart pound. "This is it," Daniel whispered, his eyes scanning the area. "We know where the shipment is. We know Victor's men are here. We just have to wait for the right moment to act." Maria nodded, her hands gripping the small bag containing evidence. Fear pressed at her chest, but determination burned brighter. She had survived fire, secrets, lies, and threats. She could face Victor, and she had to, for her son and the truth. Leila crouched beside them. "Remember, slow and precise. We don't engage unless we have to. We get the proof, intercept the shipment, and let the authorities handle the rest. Victor is dangerous, but his greed is also his weakness. He trusts too much in his men and plans." Maria felt her stomach tighten. Every nerve in her body was alert, every sense heightened. She could see the containers stacked on the trucks, guarded by men she had memorized from the stolen documents. Victor himself was there, moving between the guards with calculated precision, issuing orders. His presence was chilling, commanding. And Maria felt a cold wave of fear wash over her. Suddenly, one of Victor's men spotted movement near the edge of the dock. Maria froze. The guard's eyes narrowed and he raised his hand, signaling Victor. Victor turned sharply, his gaze sweeping the area. And Maria felt the weight of his eyes even from a distance. "Stay calm," Daniel whispered, though his voice trembled slightly. "We wait for the signal." Minutes passed, each one stretching like hours. Maria's chest ached, her hands damp with sweat. She could hear the distant waves hitting the docks, the hum of the trucks, and the murmured commands from Victor. Everything depended on their timing. Finally, the shipment began to move, containers being loaded onto a truck. Maria knew this was their moment. She signaled to Daniel and Lila. They moved quietly, sticking to shadows, approaching the truck and its contents as they neared. Lila pulled out a small camera and began documenting the shipment, taking photographs of labels, codes, and the boxes themselves. Daniel noted the guards' positions and movements. Maria's heart pounded. This was it. They had the proof they needed. Suddenly, a voice called out sharply from behind. "Stop! Who's there?" Maria froze. One of Victor's men had noticed them. Her heart raced, but she refused to panic. Daniel grabbed her arm. "Move now," he shouted. They sprinted toward a small alley behind the trucks, dodging shadows and crates. Victor's men shouted and gave chase. Maria could hear the sound of running footsteps and the sharp calls of her pursuers. Her legs ached, her lungs burned. But adrenaline pushed her forward. They reached a safe distance, hidden behind a stack of shipping containers. Maria's chest heaved, but she clutched the documents tightly. They had escaped, and the shipment evidence was safe, Mom. "We did it," Daniel whispered, his voice filled with relief and exhaustion. "We have the proof. Victor's plan is exposed." Maria nodded, still trembling, but she felt a surge of triumph. Fear had guided her, but determination had carried her. They had faced danger head-on, and they had survived. Suddenly, Lila's phone buzzed. She checked it quickly and looked at Maria and Daniel, her expression tense. "It's Victor. He knows something's wrong. He's furious. We have to move now before he tries to retaliate." Maria felt a chill run down her spine. Victor was clever, but now he had lost control. They had the evidence, and the authorities were on their way. His power was being dismantled. The next hours were a whirlwind. The authorities intercepted the shipment, arresting several of Victor's men and securing the evidence. Victor himself was not there, but his network was being dismantled. Maria, Daniel, and Lila watched from a distance, relief washing over them. The danger was far from completely gone. But the immediate threat had been neutralized. Later. Back at the townhouse, Maria finally allowed herself to sit and breathe. She looked at her son and Lila, feeling a mixture of exhaustion, pride, and relief. "Daniel, we did it," she whispered. "We stopped him. We protected ourselves. We honored your father's work." Daniel nodded, his eyes tired but bright. "Mom, your courage saved us. I'm proud of you. And now, we can finally live without constant fear." Lila smiled faintly. "It wasn't easy, but we did it together. The documents, your planning, your bravery, it all made a difference." Maria thought about her husband, the fire, the secrets, and the long, dangerous path they had walked. She realized that through fear, danger, and betrayal, they had found strength. Her family had survived not just by luck, but through courage, love, and determination. The next days brought calm. Victor's network was dismantled. The authorities continued their investigation. And Maria and Daniel could finally breathe. They rebuilt their lives slowly, cautiously, but with hope. One evening, Maria stood by the window, looking out at the city. She thought about the fire that had destroyed her home, the notebook her husband had left, the stranger who had warned them, and the dangerous path that had followed. It had been terrifying, but it had also revealed the strength within her. She turned to Daniel. "Son, I still remember that night when everything changed. The fire, the secrets, the fear. But we survived, and we're stronger because of it." Daniel smiled softly. "Mom, Yes, and will continue to protect each other, no matter what comes next. Maria nodded, feeling a deep sense of peace. The past could not be changed, but the future was theirs to protect. They had faced fear, danger, and secret sands. They had won Dot as she looked out at the city lights. Maria knew that life would always have challenges, but she also knew that courage, love, and determination could overcome even the darkest threats. And now, with Victor's power broken and the evidence in safe hands, Maria and Daniel could finally begin to heal, rebuild, and move forward. Maria turned toward the camera, her eyes filled with emotion. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Remember, courage and determination can help you overcome even the darkest moments. And never forget that protecting your loved ones is always worth the fight.